is just fantastic. Captain's log, subdate 210202.1. I decided to pay the resident tax dodgers a visit. All have indicated to me that they are from the Channel Islands and are protected by the Crown. Sounds to me like I need to arrest the person using a royal alias. Welcome everyone to the Halls of Injustice. Today we have inmate number 057 who's been sentenced to a short jail term, but there are consequences for it. To start the story, we go with a man called Rhodri Harries. Rhodri Harries and a unnamed, for obvious reasons we'll get to later, woman were friends for about 10 years, staying in contact via Facebook messages. Eventually, they started dating. It is worth noting now, at no point during their relationship did they live together. There are moments where Rhodri Harries did stay with this lady, but not live with her on any permanent basis. Rhodri Harries is a very obsessive man, the type that he will bombard you with messages non-stop. He will FaceTime you while he is at work. He will make a concerted effort to constantly be around you, and if you don't reply, he will sulk and accuse you of infidelity. If that's not a big warning sign of one's insecurities, I don't know what is. To put that aside for a moment, in August of 2019, the unnamed woman, let's call her Jane for the rest of the video, they usually do it with unnamed peoples, Jane Doe, that works, began receiving messages via Facebook from a profile in the name of Dean Thomas. Oddly enough, that's the name of my school bully. I beat him though, it's fine. Jane Doe did not know anyone by that name. The messages themselves started out as friendly, then very quickly became sexual, ranging from crude to wild sex, with a fair amount of aggression littering those messages. It was believed that the messages were designed to give Jane Doe the impression that she was being followed or stalked by an unknown man. So she reached out to the police, which led to Dean Thomas, air quotes, stopping the messages for a while. Skipping ahead in time to February 2020, because yes, this did eventually start up again. Rhodri Harries and Jane Doe are still together, enjoying one another's company, and Jane Doe is making all the concessions she has to make for a somewhat peaceful life with a very insecure man. In February 2020, Jane Doe began receiving texts and calls from an unknown number that begged her to resume a previous sexual relationship that the pair had supposedly had, which would include details of what cars had been parked outside her home on very specific days. Understandably, this led to Jane Doe becoming very scared, to the point where she would not leave her home, which meant Rhodri Harries would do all he had to do to care for her, for example, the shopping, protecting her, because that is the male thing. One must always protect te women. Not long into this hiatus from public life, Jane Doe started to suspect Rhodri Harries as being the one in control of the accounts that were harassing her. The incident that really made her suspect him was when she was conversing with a friend and confiding to an extent, and he was in fact in the room, but he had misunderstood what they had said, and he relayed it back as misinformed via stalker messages. It is worth noting at this point, Jane Doe had gotten so afraid, so scared of what was going on, she would go to bed with a knife under her pillow for protection. I'm somewhat surprised at no point did she think to simply use it, but I'm equally glad she didn't. She instead contacted the police, who started a rather intensive, extensive, in-depth investigation into Rhodri Harries. It didn't take them long to prove it was him, because the person buying the top-up credits for the mobile phone used to send the messages matched his own movements via cell site analysis. Now, he had claimed that it wasn't him, and that the phone movements could have been from the stalker following him around as he travelled through Carmarthenshire and Pembrokeshire. But understandably, when all the evidence was laid out in front of him, he blinked and conceded and pled guilty to controlling and coercive behaviour. Last year, or was it the year before, in 2019 or 2020, the UK law was changed on DV to include controlling and coercive behaviour. When this went to court, the prosecution flayed him. In an impact statement summarised for the court by the prosecutor, the victim said she had been completely destroyed by the defendant's actions and had been left unable to trust other people. She believed she was being stalked, which is why she slept with a knife under her pillow. Jane Doe had confided in Rhodri Harries about her fears and repeatedly reassured him she had never met the person who was stalking her. The defendant then played along with this and kept telling her that he would be there for her. When he found out who the person was, he would kill them. When she found out who it was, she felt humiliated and embarrassed and had to then tell her family what had been happening. The prosecutor concluded this by saying the victim had always been an outgoing person, but now, in short, feels to be a shell of her former self, and she feels she will never be able to trust anyone again. So what did the defense say? He accepted his behaviour had been inexcusable, and that his quest to find out if she was cheating on him became all-consuming and had ultimately cost him the relationship, saying he attempted to test his partner's fidelity by laying snares and traps. He got the answer he wanted, but ironically the cost of it was the relationship itself. If any relationship has a test like that, then it is not a relationship worth having, and it is certainly not worth dragging others down because of your own insecurities that are so severe they are all consuming. Under the circumstances, regardless of his lack of previous convictions, a custodial sentence is required if found guilty, which, on that note, he was found guilty. Recorder Simon Mills described this as bizarre but also wicked, which had inflicted a form of emotional violence on his former partner. Harries was worried he would lose his job of 20 years if he was sent to prison, and that perhaps the court needed to be mindful of the impact on his 11-year-old son. I'll be honest, if anyone should be mindful of them, it shouldn't be the court, it should be you, Mr. Harries. You let your son down. You destroyed another person's life by controlling them. It is domestic violence, and it is unacceptable. A custodial term is required. Rhodri Harries did plead guilty, so he was in fact sentenced to a lighter sentence of 12 months in prison. 6 of those will be in prison. The other 6 will be on license to serve in the community. He will also be subject to an indefinite restraining order, which bans him from contacting his victim and from entering the town Pembroke. He can stay the feck out. In fact, I'd argue he should be banned from the entire county. A lot of these towns aren't overly big, and he could in fact follow again if he so chose to. If your job happened to be in Pembroke, by the way, good luck. Personally, I would sentence you to a lot longer, but I'm a known dick. Get in your ISO cube, it is where you belong. As we are done here, I'd like to know what you think about this. It's not our usual case, but it is a very interesting case. So please do let me know in the comments down below. As a final thing, I shall be streaming on Twitch tonight. If I don't see you there, have a fantastic day, and thank you all for listening.